Avocado Toast Budget. If you're new here, my name is Lexa, and today is part 2 of me setting up my budget inside of YNAB for 2023. If you haven't checked it out yet, part 1 is already live. We cover pretty much setting the foundation of your YNAB budget in that video, including choosing your categories, figuring out how much money you need to budget for each of those categories, and setting targets inside of the YNAB app. Today's video, we are going to go over executing your YNAB budget, including how credit cards work inside of YNAB, how to assign all of your money to a specific category, some shortcuts to make using YNAB a little bit easier, and how to track all of your expenses inside of your YNAB budget. Of course, I'll leave part 1 linked in the description box down below. It'll also be a part of the same playlist that this video is going to be on, which is like my all about YNAB playlist that I have. I have tons of videos about YNAB, and then just a ton of other videos about budgeting, paying off debt, saving money, and investing. So if you want to learn more, consider hitting that subscribe button down below. Even with breaking these videos up into 2 parts, I know that there's a lot to cover, so I've split this video up into chapters. So if you need to go back and reference certain parts, or you're just looking for a specific aspect of YNAB, hopefully that'll make it even easier for you to navigate these videos. We have got a lot to cover today, so let's go ahead and get into it. So now we are going to tell YNAB just how much money we have on hand right now. And we do that by inputting our bank accounts, any money you have inside of a checking or savings account, and any money that you have on your credit cards. So now we're moving away from this section over here. Let's just close these accounts for now. And coming over here to this dark blue section and clicking Add Account. There are 2 different ways that you can do this, a linked or an unlinked account. YNAB will hook up directly to bank accounts and credit cards. It's not going to ever move money around in your bank account for you. It is just going to automatically kind of keep your budget updated. So if an expense comes out of your credit card or your bank account, it is going to be reflected inside of YNAB, even if you don't put that expense in manually. The other option is an unlinked account, where you just tell YNAB the name and type of your account and how much money that you have in there. And then you go through and manually track your expenses, meaning every single time that you spend money or money comes out of your account, you're gonna tell YNAB that that happened and assign it to a category, which is gonna be something we quickly go over in this video. If you have ADHD or you're someone who has a history of not sticking with your budget and not sticking with coming back to it, I would recommend doing a linked account just because it's so much easier if you forget about this budget for a month to come back and update it and get yourself back on track, because YNAB will have a history of all of the money that you have spent, and you're gonna be able to go through and categorize it and catch yourself up pretty quickly. But I also hesitate to say that because I think one of the best parts of YNAB comes about whenever you track your own expenses and you get into the habit of plugging in your expenses as they come out of your account. That's why, even though I like to set up my budget in YNAB on a day-to-day basis, I like to use the YNAB app because it's easy to just plug in information. And sometimes when we link our accounts, we get into the habit of letting YNAB do all of that work for us, which is a little bit tricky because it's not instantaneous. It does take a couple of days for YNAB to update. So if an expense has come out of your account today and you haven't told YNAB about it yet, it might not show up in your account until a few days later, which therefore could cause you to end up overspending. I have most of my accounts linked, but for this tutorial, we're gonna go through and do unlinked accounts. The nickname is just the account name. So in this case, I'm gonna do all of my savings and checking accounts first, and then I'll go through and show you how we're gonna do credit cards. I have multiple different accounts at multiple different banks because I am in the process of moving all of my money over to Ally. But because I'm in the middle of that process, I have way more bank accounts than most people would have. So don't let the fact that I have so many accounts deter you. It does not matter how many accounts that you have, YNAB is gonna put all of that information together for you. So I'm gonna go through and look at how much is inside each one of my accounts. I have $6,785.20 in there. I'm gonna add another account. Now I'm gonna put in my savings account. I meant to move all of these to the right places before I filmed this video, but I forgot. It's fine, we're rolling with it. I've told YNAB that each individual account and how much it has, but up here in our budget, it's saying, okay, between all of your accounts right now, I have this $13,000 to budget. And that is what is going to matter most when it comes to actively using our YNAB budget. Now we are going to go through and add credit cards. Again, you can link your credit cards if you want to. For this example, I'm going to do unlinked. I like to name them by the carrier. So my Amex, it is a credit card. This is important because YNAB handles credit cards differently. But what I'm going to do is go on and look up what the total balance on my credit card is right now. This is how much has already cleared on my card. So right now on my Amex, I have $178.59. I have an Apple bill that's pending, but I'm not going to add that here because it hasn't cleared through yet. and therefore is not reflected in my overall balance. Now, instead of just adding this account like it did with our bank accounts, it is going to go through and ask you, do you want to create a target to pay off your balance over time on your credit card? AKA, are you in credit card debt? Or do you want to be able to cover this entire balance? AKA, pay it off in full. You can also choose to skip this for now. In my case, we're going to click cover my entire balance. I'll give you a quick example with my other credit card of what it would look like if you're in credit card debt. However, if you have any more questions about how credit cards work inside of YNAB, I really recommend checking out that whole YNAB credit card tutorial that I have. But we're going to cover the basics of what you need to know here. Now, the reason that we didn't add a separate category for credit cards inside of YNAB to begin with is because whenever I add my account here, YNAB didn't change my line item budget whenever I added just in my bank accounts. But when I added this Amex credit card, when we go back to our budget page, you can now see that YNAB has added this credit card payments category group, and the categories underneath it are my individual credit cards. And that's because how YNAB is coded and programmed to deal with credit cards very much reflects how they actually work in real life. Because whenever I spend money, for example, $50 at the grocery store on my credit card, I didn't actually pay the grocery store $50. Technically, the credit card company paid the grocery store $50 for me, and I now owe the credit card company that $50. Technically, I'm not in debt because I have paid them back by when I was supposed to. But what gets tricky is that if I swipe a debit card at the grocery store for $50, if I don't have $50 in my bank account, it's either going to reject it and I'm not going to be able to pay for that, or I'm going to overdraft and I'm going to immediately owe the bank that money, and there's not going to be that $50 inside of my bank account. But if I only have $10 inside of my bank account and I swipe my Amex for $50 at the grocery store, it's going to go through and I'm still going to have $10 inside of my bank account. The difference is I now owe Amex $50. And if I don't pay that on time, it's going to cost me a lot of money in high interest rates. Whenever I go through and I show you what it looks like to actively use your budget inside of YNAB, it's going to make more sense how credit cards are a little bit different. But for now, keep in mind that they are going to be a completely separate item on here, that you're not going to be able to delete this category like you can other categories, because it's not technically a category, it's representing your actual credit card. For now, just know that you need to go through and add all of your credit cards. So on my Chase card, I have right now $1,182.96. I have enough money I can pay that off in full, but I want to give you an example of what it looks like if you don't. YNAB is the system that I use to pay off $20,000 of credit card debt, and it's the thing that I attribute to the fact that I was actually able to do that because it was the only thing that clicked and made sense for me when it came to how credit cards work. If it's the case that you know that you don't have enough money to pay off your credit card debt in full at the end of the month or at the end of whenever it's due, you're gonna create a target, click next, and then you have two different options. You can create a target to pay off a balance by a specific date, or you can pay a specific amount every month until your balance is paid off. If you're a beginner who's trying to tackle credit card debt, this is probably going to be the one that's going to be the easiest for you, because how much you're going to be able to put toward your credit card is really heavily going to depend just on how much money you're working with every month. Right now, if you're drowning in credit card debt and you don't know what to do, put this monthly payment amount as whatever your minimum payment is. You can look that up on your credit card bill. It might end up fluctuating depending on if your balance ends up continuing to grow, if it goes down, how much interest you owe. But for now, just take a look and see what your last minimum payment was and put that information here. We can always go back through and change it if you have a little bit of extra wiggle room inside of your budget in order to put more than the minimum payment. That's going to be our goal. Chances are if you have credit card debt, it's really high interest and it's probably going to be one of your top goals right now. But if you put your minimum payment right now, then you'll be able to figure out what to work with. So in this example, I'm just going to put $80 a month. My camera battery is dying, so I'm going to quickly go through, add the rest of my credit card accounts, and then we're going to meet back up here. I remembered a quick thing I want to add, that you can also add cash to this. If you want to count any cash that you have on hand as money that you have, you don't have to just add a bank account. You can go under an unlinked account, and then right here, you can put it as cash, as like the type of account. I have cash, but I never count my cash as real money. This is why the cash envelope system didn't work for me. Now I have all of my bank accounts and credit cards input into YNAB. If you want to calculate your net worth, you can also do unlinked accounts that are like your debt accounts, like we were showing back when we were setting targets, or tracking accounts, which are like your assets versus liabilities, whether those are your investments or mortgage or your car or anything like that. If you want to be able to track your net worth over time, I already have a separate app that does that. I don't do that on YNAB. I just focus on the budgeting aspect of it. Another thing that you might notice here is that originally I believe we had like 13,000 or something here, in our budget, which was like our total amount of money to work with. And now it's lower, even though I added more accounts. And that's because it takes the amount of money that you have in cash, meaning actual cash, or in a savings, or what is that account called? A checking account. And then it subtracts the total amount that you have on your credit cards. And then that's what this number is right here. In this case, we're in the positive, which tells me that I do have enough money that I can pay off my credit cards in full if I want to, and if I am still able to, considering we still have to budget this money and make it work for us. But if you're looking at this number and it's negative, it is likely because the balance on your credit cards exceeds the balance of all of your checking and cash accounts. We're on to the next step, which is deciding what we need that money to do for us. If you're in the position where you can fund an entire month's full of expenses, because we took the time to assign a target to every single category in your budget, you can actually just click this little button right up here to highlight all of your categories, click over here on this underfunded button, and it's going to automatically move this money from ready to assign and put it into each category. That is why I love setting up a target for every category, because anytime that you get paid, it is going to make it so much easier for you to decide what that money needs to do for you based on whatever your underfunded category looks like. But there's a really good chance that especially if you're just starting off budgeting, you are nowhere near being able to fund a full month in advance. And that's totally okay. That's actually like a big goal that YNAB talks about, is getting to the point where you're 30 days ahead in your budget. And that is the idea that money that you would make today, you wouldn't need to spend for another 30 days. Gives you a little bit of a buffer. It acts kind of like an emergency fund basically. And they talk about reaching that goal. So it is not that you're alone in that. Trust me, I was nowhere near that. And that is again why our targets are so helpful, because now we can go in and say, for example, for me right now when I'm filming this is January 5th. So I know rent right here, I've already paid that. So I don't need to budget rent for January because it already happened. It's already out of my account. I'll need to think about February's rent, but maybe that's not on my radar right now. Maybe I just need to look at, when do I get paid next? What bills are due? What kind of expenses do I need to fund? And go from there. There are two different ways that you can assign money to a category. You can either do what we did, which is highlight a category or multiple categories if you want to. Come over here and click the underfunded button. Clicking an underfunded button is going to move money from up here in your ready to assign into the specific category, and it's going to fund it the rest of the way, or as much as it possibly can. So in this example, we'll see as soon as I click this underfunded button, watch what happens to this money up here. Bam. We undo it, redo. We just moved that money. We're not moving any money inside of our bank accounts when we do that. It doesn't matter where this money is. All that really matters is that we now know what this $350 is going to be doing for us. And that is covering our utility bill. But what if we come down here to something like variable expenses and you say, okay, I want to budget $350 for groceries for the month, but I don't want to assign all $350. Either I don't have enough to be able to do that, or maybe you're starting this budget halfway through the month or at the end of the month. The nice thing about YNAB is that you don't have to wait till the first of the month to create a budget, to start a budget, because it literally doesn't matter. Since we're only working with the money that you have right now, you just have to be conscious of the fact that if you're making a budget toward the end of the month, you want to focus less on the month that you're on and probably more on next month and getting yourself through the rest of the end of the month. So for groceries, let's say I know that I just bought groceries, so I want to be pretty frugal with the amount of money that I'm putting in here, so I only want to put $100 instead. We're going to type 100 in assigned, and that did the same exact thing. It moved $100 from our ready to assign into this category. And now a couple of things have happened. You'll see this little pie chart kind of started filling itself out here. And over here, YNAB is telling you that this is 28% funded, or AKA, you have put 28% of what you need to put in this category by the end of the month in order to reach your target. As you are working on getting ahead in your budget, the variable expenses is probably where you're going to have the most wiggle room and where you're going to employ this technique of not fully funding it until you get toward the end, or maybe never even fully funding it if you just don't have quite enough money to get there. If you notice month after month that you're not able to fully fund all of your variable expenses, you might just want to go back through, ask yourself some questions, tweak your budget, and see if you need to be a little bit more realistic about where your money is going. Another important thing I want to remind you of is that for both my Amex and my Quicksilver card, I put the target as wanting to pay it off in full. So when I click on it, it's going to assign the entire balance to reach my target this month. You can see $137.89, $137.89. However, with my Chase, it says that I only have to assign $80 to reach my target, but my Chase card has the most money on it. That's because the Chase card is our example of what to do when you don't have enough money to pay off your credit cards in full. When I go through and assign $80 to my Chase category, this is telling YNAB this is the payment I plan on making this month to my credit card. So I need to actually go and like do that. I need to make sure that my payment scheduled is this $80. Whereas with my Amex and my Quicksilver, since I have those set to pay off in full every month, I need to make sure that that is reflected on my credit card by telling my credit card that I want to pay off the statement balance in full each month. Now, in the case of my budget, we have a little bit of extra wiggle room to work with, so let me show you what that looks like. The first thing I'm going to do is, just to make it easier, I'm just going to click this little button up here, highlight everything, click underfunded, and then go from there. For example, I know that I already paid rent this month, so I don't need that $1,200 in January, but I do want to go ahead and put that $1,200 in February. If we're working with that like 30 or 31 day rule that YNAB has, the idea being that since it's the 5th of the month, I want to have all of my expenses through the 5th of February covered. And that main one here is going to be rent. Now going back to January, another thing that I personally want to do is I'm going to go ahead and edit this goal before I forget. You can switch the type of targets in your on your credit cards the same way that you can for any other category. It's just going to give you different options. Over here we have the payoff balance by date. If you're wanting to pay it off in full, do this and then just make it next month, and then the pay specific amount monthly. And now we can go through and see that I have met all of my targets for the month, but we've got little check marks under the variable expenses, but we have these little pies here for the sinking funds. That's because this is programmed with two different goals in mind. One is the overall goal, which is the $45 by March. And then one is the other goal of how much do I need to set aside each month in order to have $45 set aside by March 3rd. And the answer to that is $15. So YNAB's telling me I'm 33% funded. So even though this pie chart looks like it's not complete, this section is now green, telling me that I'm good to go. I'm on track to reach that goal by the target date. If I were to only put $10 into this, we can see that that pie chart is still just a little bit filled in, but because it's not that full 15, it's giving me this yellow sign telling me that I need to assign $5 more to stay on track. This is really helpful because what happens if $10 is all I can put toward trash right now? I can't put that extra $5 until I get paid again. Next month, YNAB is going to recalculate for you. So we can see here that instead of the $15 goal, now that I've gone over to February, YNAB is now telling me I need to assign $1,750. So it's having me assign a little bit more in the future coming months to make up for the fact that I underfunded it the month before. And it will continue to do that. If I flash forward to March, now this same target has changed to $35 because this is due on March 3rd. And if I haven't added anything else to it and I'm looking at March, I only have $10 for that goal, so I need $35 more. So looking at this, you might go through and say, okay, with this money that you have left, you could completely go through and fund the entirety of February, which is true. That is an option. If one of your goals is that you really want to get ahead in your finances, which is acting like an emergency fund, you can just continue going through, clicking the underfunded button through the months until you run out of money up here. But look what happens. In March, I have about $3,200, but it's underfunded by $4,800. If I click that, now YNAB is going to tell me, hey, we have an issue here. You've assigned more money than you have. This is really important because if YNAB didn't tell you this, you might be looking at your budget, seeing all this green and being like, hey, I'm good to go. But in actuality, you've got money assigned here that you don't have. You can click this fix this button and tell YNAB which categories you want to unassign. So let's say I want to come down here to my oh shit category. That's gonna help me a little bit. Maybe let's unassign money from my other oh shit category because that's why they're there. But I've still got a lot to work with. I've got to start asking myself, where is this money gonna come from? I want to continue making investments, so maybe I'm gonna take it from the treat yourself category, and maybe my vacation is just gonna have to wait a little bit. Now you'll see on that final vacation, it only took out the amount that it needed to get you back to zero. But all these other categories, you have to be careful because, for example, I'm working ahead here. In my oh shit category, it just brought it back down to completely zero, which means that until March, I have no oh shit category. So instead, what one of your options is, rather than clicking the fix this button, you can go through and take out specific amounts. I could just take out what I contributed for the month of March from a category, or I could just contribute less to a certain category. Rather than 150, I'll contribute 100 to this one. Play with these numbers. The idea is that you are deciding what your money needs to do for you. we're backing it all the way up here. Because for me personally, I actually don't want to go through and fund through March, because even though this looks like I have a lot of extra money, the reason it looks like that is because technically my sinking funds have reached their target for this month, but I've been saving for a while for a lot of these goals. So I want that to be reflected in how much I have right now set aside for these. So for example, I've been saving a while for a vacation. So I don't want just $100 right now. Even though that's my monthly target moving forward, I want some of this money already set aside for that thing. So I can put $1,500 here. Same thing with car repairs. I did just have to get my car looked at. There were some questionable things happening, but I know that my car is on the fritz, so I like having a good amount of money there. So I'm gonna put a total of $1,000 into that goal right now. I don't plan on moving again, hopefully this year. I hope I can extend my lease past just 1 year, like I've been moving since I was 18. But I want to be prepared for moving just in case. So I'm gonna put $400 in total in this goal. I really, really want a new bed. That's one of my big goals of mine right now. So I am going to add $1,000. So before, I've just been completely highlighting and redoing this number. So that would be $1,000 in total. But I wanted to add $1,000 to the already established $150. So to do that, I just say plus 1,000. You can do the same thing with dividing, timesing, minus. That's what this little thing is here to let you know. A new car, very big goal of mine. So for now, I'm gonna put that at 2,000. There's a good chance that after this video, I'll probably go through and like tweak some of these things. I just wanna show you what this looks like. And then I actually have a little bit more time to max out my 2022 Roth IRA, and I wanna do that, and I believe I need an extra $1,500 to do that, so I'm gonna assign that here. Now that leaves me with $489.34. So now I need to start thinking about where the rest of this money needs to go. I like having a bigger oh shit category already built up, so I'm gonna add $200 to that category. And then I want to add an extra $100 to my giving category as well. Now that I'm set here, I can start looking over into February and saying, okay, what are some of the next expenses that I need to fund? For example, I can cover my State Farm and my renter's insurance. I don't have to do the mental math here. YNAB is doing the math for me. Every single time that I add a category that I've highlighted, it adds that target total to this underfunded button. So I'm still in the green, but that took me way over. So I'm going to fund those first 3. And then if I want to, I can just add the $21.76 to utilities. It'll just be a little bit funded for this month and I'll have to go back in the next time that I get paid. Or I could decide to go down and fund a couple of more expenses. It's whatever makes the most sense to you. Keep going through this process, adding money, moving things around until YNAB tells you all of your money has been assigned. And now you have got your budget set up. You are ready to roll and to start actually using this budget. Yes, this has just all been the setup, but I promise you, again, it is all worth it, because now as you go through and you track your expenses, it is going to be so easy to get that all inputted, and I'm gonna show you how to do that here. Again, I prefer to track on my phone just because I like to get in the habit of as soon as I spend money, I like to just put it into my budget. But I'm gonna show you what that looks like on the laptop and then knowing that you can quickly do it on your phone as well. Let's go over what this will look like for your fixed expenses. Let's imagine it's the 12th of the month. My State Farm bill just came out of my Chase account for $122.82. I'm gonna click over here on Chase. We're gonna click this add transaction button. The date was the 12th, but pretend this says the 12th. If I put the 12th, it's gonna mess it up. So a couple of things have happened. One, it now shows up here under our account as a new transaction. Our payment amount has gone up to account for the fact that we just spent money on a credit card. And then if we look at our budget, a few interesting things have happened. You'll see that that $122.82 is reflected both here in the State Farm category where we assigned it, and then also in the Chase category. And that's because YNAB is intuitive and knows what it's doing with credit cards. And whenever I went over here to my Chase, input this transaction and told YNAB that I did in fact get charged for that $122.82, it knows that I didn't pay State Farm that $122.82. My credit card company paid them for me, and now I owe my credit card company. So rather than that money just like going away and going to State Farm, I still technically have that money in my bank account, but it has moved the $122 up to my payment amount to add to the amount that I now owe Chase to make sure that I stay on track and that if I continue to make sure that I haven't overspent anywhere or I've covered any overspending, that even as I continue to use that credit card, I'm going to continue to have fully budgeted for those expenses. This is really nice because if you're someone who's trying to pay off credit card debt and it's so hard to be like actively spending on a credit card and trying to pay it off at the same time, because how do you know whether the amount that you're setting aside to make payments on is more than like you've actually spent over the last month? YNAB is going to help you out with that. Again, if this doesn't make sense, definitely check out my credit cards and YNAB video. It'll put it all into context for you, but I wanted to show you what that looks like with credit cards. And now I want to show you what that looks like with something that is either a debit card or something that gets pulled straight out of your checking. I actually don't have any bills that are truly fixed expenses that come directly out of my checking account. I have my utilities bill, but I consider that a fixed expense, but technically it varies month to month. It just feels like a bill to me, so I put it in with fixed expenses. So for the sake of this example, we're gonna pretend like my renter's insurance comes either out of a debit card hooked up to my Capital One or straight out of my Capital One account. So I'm going to add that transaction. My renter's insurance is through Lemonade. The category is renter's insurance. The outflow is $19.84. Save that. And then we come up here and we'll see that this time, a couple of things have happened. It did lower this balance of what is in my Capital One personal checking account because this came straight from my account. And then on here, it took this money out of this category, but it didn't have to put it toward a credit card or anything because I didn't spend that money on a credit card. It's just gone because it is gone. I already paid them. But we still have the check here because this is showing us that we did fully fund that category and we've already paid that bill. Now I want to show you an example of what it looks like if you underfunded a category or you've overspent. First, we'll do an example as if you overspent using a debit card or a bank account. We'll add a transaction here, and this is going to be for our utilities bill. I have funded $350 because that's about on average what my bill is. However, it was so cold and natural gas is so expensive that let's say this month it was actually $467. I'm still gonna put that outflow here because that is how much they took out of my bank account. Click save. That money is going to be reflected that it has come out of my bank account. But then here in my budget, YNAB is letting me know, hey, you spent $467 in this category, but you only budgeted $350. So before you move on, you need to write this wrong. And it shows that by saying that this is negative 117. And there's a couple of different ways that we can cover this overspending. You can wait until you get paid again. When you have money and you're ready to assign, you can cover any overspending. If you're nervous and you don't want to wait and you want to make sure you stay on top of everything, you can move some things around. So in this case, this would be a really good time to use my oh shit category. I can click cover this overspending with, and then move down here to oh shit. It's gonna move $150 up to here. But we're gonna backtrack and take a look to see what would happen if that expense came out of a credit card instead. So let's say I have my utilities hooked up to my American Express card. Same thing, city utilities, same category, $350. I think it was, what did we do? $467 is actually what came out. They charged $467 to my credit card. I only had $350 set aside in that category for this month. So now, when we go up to our budget, we can see a few different things happen. Instead of this being red, YNAB has now made it yellow with this little credit card emoji to let me know you've overspent on your credit card now. So you need to cover this spending if you want to stay out of credit card debt or if you want to make sure that you don't continue spiraling more into credit card debt. Because right now, Amex has paid $467 to city utilities for me, but it only moved the money that it could move from this category, this $350, to my Amex card, because according to YNAB, that's the amount of money that I say I have to be able to pay Amex for that expense. So right now, I am going to owe Amex an extra $117 unless I can cover this expense before my Amex is due. So in that case, it's shown up here by showing us this little not fully done, fully checked pie and letting us know we need to move money around, or the next time that we get paid, we need to add money to this category to make sure I can pay back Amex in full for paying my city utilities bill. And we can cover that expense the same exact way. We could do an oh shit category, but let's say I didn't have any money in there right now. I already used it all. And in that case, I need to start deciding what am I willing to give and take on. In order to pay my utilities and keep my lights on, I'm fine with going without eating out or going with less eating out. So I'm gonna take that money from eating out. In that case, here, we're good to go. It moved that money up to the money that I owe Amex. This money right here is the amount that I'm going to pay Amex. Amount right here is the amount of money I have set aside to pay Amex the next time that it's due. And we can see here, it took that money out of eating out. I hope that makes sense. I hope that kind of helps you to visualize how overspending works in YNAB, and also how the difference between spending on your credit card versus spending on a debit card or out of a bank account works. I want to quickly show you what this looks like if I have categories in which I have overspent and I haven't dealt with those before the end of the month. This is why I really recommend anytime that you spend money, you immediately put it into YNAB so you don't get too far behind, because what can happen kind of toward the end of the month here is that if I wasn't really conscious of this right here and we go into February, all of a sudden that 117 and that little credit card symbol is gone. And technically my Amex is in the green because I haven't overspent any in February yet. However, this little pie is letting me know that, hey, remember from last month when you didn't fully fund that expense? This means that, just as a heads up, the amount of money you have set aside right now is not going to be able to cover your Amex in full, and your target goal is to be able to pay off your Amex in full every month. So in order to reach that goal, you've got to fill in the gaps here. And that gap came from the previous month of January. That is what overspending looks like carried on into the next month if you've overspent on a credit card. If you've overspent on a debit card or on your bank account, it looks a little bit different. So again, just quickly redoing that same city utilities bill for $467, but this time we're going back to the example of when it came out of a debit card and we overspent. We're back to this red here. And then when we go into the next month, this is what YNAB does, is that right now that negative $117 isn't reflected carrying over into the next month. Instead, it's moved up here to let me know that the money that I say that I have assigned here isn't true, because I still haven't made up for that $117 the previous month. So just as a heads up, YNAB is going to give you most of that overspending information up here when it comes to carrying over that overspending into a new month, rather than in that specific category. That's because one way or another, you have told YNAB that that money has already been spent, right? It wasn't that they charged you $467, but because you didn't have enough money inside of your bank account, it never went through. Instead, in this case scenario, we're saying that it did go through, but that it was something that I overspent on. So yes, that bill is taken care of, but future us needs to be really aware of the fact that our budget is not true right now for the month of February. It is off by $117, and when this is red, that means that I can't fully trust what's going on here, so I need to go back through and fix that. We want to be able to trust your budget, and making sure that everything is like in the green or it's on the right track is the best way to be able to make sure that you can do that. So you're going to continue tracking your expenses until it is payday, and then let me show you how you're going to tell YNAB when you get paid. So let's say today is payday. I've still got that overspending on my city utilities bill, but I've gone through, I've been tracking my spending. I need to add a transaction. This one is going to be, you can put it as your employer name, paycheck, whatever you want. I always tell myself any money that is coming in, I always like to put in ready to assign at this step in time, because it is so much easier to figure out where you want it to go whenever you're on back to your budget page. So for here, we're just going to click inflow, ready to assign, and then tell YNAB how much you got paid. $1,486. Save. This went into our checking account, go over into our budget, and now here we've got our ready to assign. Let's say it's still January, and now I have the chance that I can come here and cover this overspending by covering it with the money from ready to assign. Moves the money up here, and now we're good to go. But if we got paid and it is now the month of February, we'll see that YNAB went ahead and did that for us. So rather than YNAB saying that I have negative $170 and that I need to fix that in February, we can look when I click from January to February, it takes that $170 out of my ready to assign. It is basically just gone through, taken any extra overspending that you had. It said, okay, we're gonna take that money, fix that situation so that now you can go in moving forward trusting your budget. And now I know that it has covered that overspending, and this is actually how much money that I have to assign this month. And then your next job is to just go through and ask yourself again, what does this money need to do for me until I get paid again, and start assigning it to your categories. So that is it for today's video. I know we covered a lot, so if you have any questions, leave them down in the comments below. There will be tons of resources in the description box for you as well. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye.